Hi, I'm Juan Rivera. I've had over 20 years of residential and commercial construction experience. I've traveled the world and lived around the U.S. Over the years, I've seen and completed many projects both small and large. I'm the owner of Renaissance Development Group, Inc., a full-service construction company, and I know remodeling. Each week, I'll bring you the tips, tricks, and trends of home remodeling and improvement. We'll talk to local contractors and industry experts about the latest new trends for your home and remodeling projects. We'll show you the ins and the outs to make your project easier. So join us for the next 30 minutes on Remodeling Now. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Remodeling Now. On today's show, we have an exciting one that's going to take you back in time to the Renaissance era and show you the art of blacksmithing. So stay tuned after word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Like I said, once again, welcome to the Ocean Springs Renaissance Festival. My name is Trenton Ty, and I am a professional blacksmith. And what I'm going to do for you today is hopefully two things. I'm going to show you the way that metal used to be worked, but more importantly, hopefully I'm going to tug on your heartstrings a little bit. Because as a historian and a steward, it's not just my job to do this work, it's to make you understand why this work is so important to you, okay? So, first of all, I want to start off, I've got to put you in a proper mindset. Because if we go back to the 1400s, even just back to the 1800s, people lived in such a different fashion back then that we really don't have any concept. But I have two very silly questions I'm going to ask you, okay? The first silly question, the last time a light bulb went out in your house, when did you say to yourself, I'll just make another one? Pretty ridiculous, right? Okay, all right. Second silly question, you're going to like this one. By a show of hands, who here is wearing a homemade pair of underwear? So why would I ask you? Here's the reason. Because these two things that you depend on every morning of your life, when you get up and pull on your underwear and cut on the light switch, you cannot provide for yourself. Now that's pretty scary. Something that you depend on every day, you probably have no clue how to make for yourself. That's how far we've come, because in the old days, if you were alive and breathing, everything from your shoes to your shirt, you or somebody in your family would make it for yourselves. You were able to do for yourself. In the time of the blacksmith, there was no such thing as a hardware store. There was no such thing as Lowe's. The blacksmith was the original go-to guy. If they couldn't do it, you didn't need it. But that was the mentality everyone had. You did for yourself, and the blacksmith was kind of the crown prince of do-it-yourself. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make a very common household implement. We're going to make an iron spoon. And you're going to get to see several of the techniques that the blacksmith would have used to make this hardware. And if you've ever gone to Walmart, especially if you've ever been in college and bought the spoon for like 25 cents, let it get crusty in the sink and then throw it away, wait till you see what it's involved to make something as simple as a spoon. You will never throw away another one. Now, as a blacksmith, I have three things that I need to do my work. First of all, I have an anvil here that was made in 1860. This is a Peter Wright anvil. This is going to be very important. I want you to remember that date of 1860. I have to have good hand tools, and I have to have fire. Now, this is a hand crank blower. This was made in the 1880s. This is original. It's not period for the 1500s. I just want to make the distinction and the caveat, but they all do the same thing. In some shape or another, they force air into a fire. Now, just using this air blast and the charcoal, not Kingsford, but real lump charcoal, I can exceed a temperature of over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I want to demonstrate to you just how hot this is, because this is solid steel, 3/8" square bar. You can see that it is, in fact, glowing, but I'd like you to watch this. I'm going to put it in this little hole right here. This is my pinky finger. Now, for those of you that think that our ancestors really were not educated, you better think again, because probably none of you here would have had a clue how to bend steel with your pinky finger. But this was the technology and the know-how they had access to. And it's this malleability in the metal while it's hot that allows blacksmiths to do their work. Now, I want you to notice, what was glowing a few moments ago has now cooled. And this is what we call black heat or dangerous heat. Because even though you cannot see the heat in this metal, it can be over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is more than enough to take the hide right off of your hands. As blacksmiths in the shop, and especially you here as tourists, don't ever just reach down around the shop and pick up a piece of metal. Always tap it, touch it, and test it for heat first. Very important safety tip if you wish to retain your fingers. But once the metal has lost its color, it is no longer workable by the blacksmith without risking it being cracked. So we have a very narrow window that we can work the metal in. There comes an old blacksmith saying, strike while the iron is hot. Little pieces of the blacksmith left over in our society. Well, let's take another heat. Now, of course, what we're going to be making first is this spoon. And the first operation we have to do is we're going to take the end of the spoon, bring it to a very blunt point, and then we're going to do something called necking, which has absolutely nothing to do with teenagers and parked cars. This is a blacksmith's process where you're working the metal on two sides over the edge of the anvil. And what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze a part of the bar away from the rest of the bar. The piece on the front will become the bowl of the spoon, and the rest of the bar will become the handle of the spoon. All right, we've got a good heat. I come on the front end, and I'm bringing these pieces together, making a point, and then I hang it over the edge of the anvil about an inch. And notice that the hammer is falling half on the anvil and half off the anvil. Now, if you can see, we have now separated a portion of the metal from the rest of the bar. This little blob here in the front is what's going to become the bowl of the spoon. Now you're looking at this, and for the vast majority of you, you're saying, how in the world is that going to be a spoon? It's not wide enough. In blacksmithing, we deal in 3 dimensions, much like you did when you were a child and you were using Play-Doh. Now some of you may have played with the Play-Doh, some of you may have eaten the Play-Doh, but if you've worked with it, you understand how the steel works. We're dealing in volume. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work out this handle just a little bit, just to knock the edge off, and I'm going to take another heat. When I come out of the fire, I will take this piece and I will set it up on the diamond. That means that top edge is going to be up and down. And I'm going to start hammering in a way that's going to cause it to spread left and right. And it's going to make a small puddle of metal, which will become the bowl of our spoon. So let's go back to the fire. Now earlier I told you about striking while the iron was hot. Understand that up until about 1900, the blacksmith was one of the most important members of his community. And very quickly, within a space of 20 years, the craft and trade seemingly evaporated. It's because the blacksmiths did their job so well. The Industrial Revolution, all the machines that were making the hardware faster, better than any flesh and bone person could, where did those machines come from? They were designed and built by the men working in metal, which happened to be the blacksmiths. They did their job so well, within 20 years they eradicated their own trade. Many blacksmiths moved into becoming a fabricator and machinist, but the craft of the blacksmith very quietly and very quickly went away. But there are still remnants of the blacksmithing history in our culture. Strike while the iron is hot. What is another saying that came from the blacksmith? You all know it. Too many irons in the fire. All of you know these things. All of you know these things, but you've never associated them with the craft that they are from. There's so much of the blacksmith that is still embedded in our culture, and you don't even know it. Okay, plenty of good heat. So let's go here to the diamond. Now what was a moment ago just a blob of metal is getting a lot like a spoon. And everybody claps. Now, we have a problem because we call this the Weight Watcher spoon. You're not going to eat a lot with this guy. So what we have to do now is we have to be able to add some sort of dish, some type of bowl shape to this item in order for it to function. So once again, we've got to have another heat. We're going to have a different hammer and a different place on the anvil to work. There are two holes in the back of the anvil, known as the Hardy hole and the Pritchell hole, respectively. The Hardy hole is squared to accept different types of tools. The Pritchell hole is used for punching. Remember, it wasn't until the 1890s that somebody developed a twist drill for metal. But for thousands of years, blacksmiths have been punching holes in inch-thick steel simply by taking a hot piece of steel and a cold punch and driving all the way through it. Ever take a big pin and poke it through your Play-Doh? Same way. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this modified hammer, which is a ball peen, but it has been modified on the front end. We're going to place it over this, and we're actually going to stretch the metal down into that hole. And this will cause that flat to begin to curve into a concave shape that will be our spoon. All right, here we go. Very quickly we come to the Pritchell hole. Now we turn it back over. We're actually going to stretch it out just a little bit more on the back side, staying away from the area that we've stretched out. And ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I'll take that, absolutely. Now we still have a problem because we would use this for feeding ugly kids or ex-wives. It's very long. We need to shorten this guy up. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to cut through it. And once again, think about how you used to play with Play-Doh. When you made your Play-Doh snake, if you were really good, your mother gave you a little plastic knife, and you simply press through the clay. We're going to do the same thing, except we're going to do it in steel. And to do that, we have a little tool here that's in the vise. This is called a cutting hardy. It's nothing more than a blade on a stick. And once I get heat where I want it, I will simply lay it over this tool and then hammer all the way through it. And you'll be surprised how quickly solid steel will cut. Gonna need a little bit of heat for this one, so we gotta cook it. Now, for those of you wondering, I'm not burning coal. Now, traditionally, in a lot of these festivals, you will see a blacksmith that will be using a coal-fired forge. I use charcoal, and I actually manufacture this at my shop, 600 gallons at the time. It's nothing but wood that has gone through incomplete combustion. It is charcoal, but it has very little flame, very little smoke. It's a very concentrated form of wood as fuel. All right, I've got enough heat. I need to get the proper hammer. And I'll be going right over here to the chisel. I've got good heat. I lay it over the face of the chisel. I cut about halfway through and then I rotate it. Because what I'm going to do is cut this on 4 sides to make a cleaner cut. But you can see that it's just about to fall off right there. And everybody claps. Now, unfortunately, with this, it leaves a very sharp tip right there. So what I'm going to do is actually come in and take that sharp tip off through a process that's called hot rasping. This is a rasp that's normally used on horses' hooves. It comes from the farrier industry. But while the metal is hot, even something this coarse can actually cut into the metal. And so now we have freed the spoon. Now we're not quite through. Now whereas the spoon is very functional at this point, we still want to make it attractive. We want to make it decorative. So we're going to add a blacksmith's twist to this spoon. Now we'll have to flip the spoon around, take another heat, but we're going to use the vise once again in conjunction with a second tool. It's this guy right here. This is a very special tool, but let me get this in the fire and I'll tell you why. All right, the reason that this tool is so special is because this tool was made by the man that trained me, J. Penamore Riekert, who was a blacksmith for the last 40 years of his life. Jay was an incredible craftsman, but when Jay first got started, he made all of his tools. And if you look very closely, do you see what this tool is made from? A railroad spike. In the early days when Jay was the first generation of the new blacksmiths. And understand that it had been since 1900 that this craft had been gone, disappeared. And Jay was the first generation of people that started picking this craft back up from the ashes, learning its trade again, learning its secrets. But like anybody, they used what they had on hand. And since Jay happened to be close to the railroad tracks, a lot of his early tools happened to be made out of railroad property. So, but this is this adjustable bending bar. Because it has this narrowing mouth here, I can use this to actually twist several different sizes of steel just like a wrench. I'll use that on the spoon and in the vise to actually make the handle of that spoon twist like a candy cane. Now the only trick about the twist is I have to have a really good heat on it. All right, now, you've all seen how quickly the metal cools. So before I take the metal out, you will always see me look and make sure that all my tools are in the appropriate place. Because if I have to hunt something, I've just wasted my heat. Very quickly, I move to the vise. I lock it in. I take my bending tool, and then as Jay said, ring around the rosies. And what we have, ladies and gentlemen, is one twisted handle on our spoon. Everybody claps. Now, what is the #1 problem with metal when it's outside? Rust, absolutely. So what we need is 1,400-year-old Rust-Oleum of some nature. And it comes in this form, wax. Now the problem is that this thing is so hot right now that the wax won't even stick to it. Very hot. So we've got to remove some heat from it. We just lost 300 degrees. Still too hot. And we keep doing this until it's hot enough to melt the wax, but not hot enough to cook it off. Once that happens, now this entire piece has been coated. We cool it all the way down. And now we have a sealed spoon. Ladies and gentlemen, your spoon. Now I have a very dirty trick because I'm going to pass this around for you to see because I'm not finished yet. So please don't go anywhere because this next part is the most important part of the demonstration. I'm going to start with you guys over here. Would you pass this around to everybody, sir? Thank you very much. Now let's see who was paying attention. Early on in the demonstration, I gave you a date when this anvil was made. When was it made? 1860. Fantastic. Thank you, young lady. The reason I ask you to remember the date of this anvil is because I want you to know how long it's been here in the U.S. Soon after it was made, it was shipped here to be worked on, and since that time, there has been somebody working this anvil until I received it when I was 15. If I were to ask you what your lifetime is made up of, what qualifies as a lifetime, it's all the experiences that you've ever had. with your family, with your friends, with your foes. It's the times you've loved, it's the times that you've hated, the good times, the bad times. This is what makes up a lifetime. And when we sit down with our family and we remember those in our family that we love, we tell the stories about our family. Our lifetimes are collections of stories, and they're important because they're our families. That's what makes up a lifetime. Now, if somebody came up to you on your deathbed and said, for $20, I'm going to pay you $20, and when I do, I'm going to erase every memory of you, every story, every chuckle, and every laugh that your family may ever have about you, it's going to be completely gone. You would be horrified. But soon after 1860, a young apprentice started working on this anvil. He grew up, he learned the trade, became a journeyman, and in his own time, a master. And then when he laid his head down, another came behind him. 5 lifetimes have passed by on the top of this anvil before I ever put hands on it. But even if I spend the rest of my life working on this anvil, bleeding and sweating, and adding my history to it, there are 5 lifetimes locked within the steel of this anvil that we will never know, because somebody took this anvil off the family farm and sold it to an antique dealer for $20. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not just a blacksmith. I am a preservationist. I'm a historian. I am a steward. It is my job to not just preserve these traditions, but to tell you why they are important and how quickly we are losing them. There are 5 lifetimes locked in this steel that no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, I will never even know their names. This is the price we pay for not keeping our history. And even those of us who try so desperately, we can't do it all. And it's not your job to dress up in funny clothes and come to the Renaissance Festival and do shows. That's not what we ask. That's our job. But it is so terribly important that you take the time to tell your children where they come from and that this is a part of their history. Because if you don't, it will go away and it cannot be taken back. I was 7 years old when I saw the first blacksmith work his magic in front of me. He took a bar of iron, he put it in the fire, and when he brought it back, it was glowing, and he said, "Superman, eat your heart out," and he bent it in half. That man was Jay Riekert, the man I would later find again as a young man and would apprentice to and would serve with him until he died. It only takes one moment to change a lifetime, ladies and gentlemen. I am living proof of that. So as you go around this festival today, understand what you're seeing is not just a festival, it's not just something to see, it's where you are from. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trenton Tye. Thank you very much.